As the war dragged on, European presence in colonies thinned. Africans took the opportunity to stage armed uprisings and other forms of protest. Major inspirations for these revolts were resentment and hatred towards colonialists. No matter the cost, colonial authorities responded ruthlessly and succeeded in putting down all the revolts.
Following World War I, African self-sufficiency had declined and required European investment in infrastructure. This resulted in the creation of port facilities, railroads, railways, and telegraph wires and communication networks previously not available.
To boost the economy, Africans took on cash crop farming and mining. However, this was done during forced labor practices imposed on them by the white settlers.
In World War I, Africa was not met with sovereignty or self-determination, but instead the consolidation of colonial powers. This led to the promotion of the ideology of African nationalism. New African elites were established as Africans began to improve economy through better education and higher paying jobs, which were gained through education in European-style education systems and adaptation to European culture.
National identity took many forms, including identities based on race, ethnicity, religion, and language. Many nationalists also preached the idea of Pan-Africanism, which preached black pride. Also, collectively, these ideas influenced the development of nationalist movements during the 30s and 40s, and these ideas translated into demands for independence from colonialism.
The Great War, Russian Revolution, and Mexican Revolution helped spread radical ideas and the promise of new political possibilities throughout Latin America. They were promoted by the idea of Enlightenment-derived liberalism that helped spread the idea of independence movements. Another growing influence was universities, which helped taught ideas from revolutions in Russia and Mexico.
Radicalism took many formations, including communism and other rebellious agendas. However, political parties were created to discourage these other political forms. Military and landed elites in Latin America contained these rebellious movements, but the cultural and political popularity of radicalism persisted.
U.S. began to dominate export-oriented economies in Latin America by providing large-scale investments. And in 1912, William Howard Taft provided the policy of dollar diplomacy, which allowed U.S. to provide large-scale investments and avoid military confrontations.
The Great Depression demonstrated how involved Latin America was in the world economy. U.S. investments were not able to be maintained during this economic downturn. Also, agricultural products and raw materials were vulnerable to effects of depression. However, this allowed Latin American countries to experiment with other forms of economies, such as the industrial economy and urban development.
New good neighbor policies established in the 1920s and 30s required the U.S. to extradite military forces and use U.S. Marines to train local indigenous police forces to maintain and control their countries. However, this was threatened in Nicaragua when Augusto Cesar Sandino opposed this.
As a part of a plan for U.S. forces to be removed from Nicaragua, they trained the National Guard there to make sure opposition forces did not take control of the government. Also, during this good neighbor policy, the Secretary of State, Gordon Hull, attended the 7th International Conference of American States in Montevideo, Uruguay. He signed the Convention of the Rights and Duties of States, which meant that no state had the right to interfere in internal or external affairs of another. However, right after this occurred, Lázaro Cárdenas, the president of Mexico, nationalized the oil industry, which lost a lot of money from U.S. and British investors.